Alrighty, guys. So, welcome to the first ever episode. This is the debut episode of the Snyder Report. This is just a podcast where I kind of cover everything and anything in sports. Specifically, this week we're going to focus on Thanksgiving games like the NFL, basketball, and also we're going to talk about, of course, the college football playoffs, which I don't know about you guys, but I am truly excited about. I love college football, especially in bowling season. There's just no better time for sports, honestly. You've got the playoffs coming up in the NFL. You've got the playoffs for the college football. March Madness, obviously, is going to start coming around the corner. College basketball conferences are starting. It's an excellent time to be a sports fan, depending on your team, of course. So, right now, we've got the Snyder Report. This is going to just be a breakdown, basically, of the games that I'm interested in specifically. There are things that are going to be covered that maybe aren't in the presentation only because I had limited time, but also mainly because I want to focus on these things. But I will be reacting live as well to new updates in the sports industry. So UConn, losing back-to-back games in men's basketball and college basketball, that's huge. UConn went undefeated last year. Now all of a sudden they've lost 2 games in a row to 2 unranked opponents. Now it is the beginning of the season, but that's not something you would normally see out of that team. So that's something to keep an eye on. But things like that, where obviously things have developed in sports, we're going to keep an eye on, we're going to touch on. So let's get into it. This is the first episode. Let's see here. Topics. So as I said at the beginning, we're going to cover Thursday night football, which is Thanksgiving, of course. That's starting with the Bears and Lions at 11:30 a.m. on CBS. We have the Giants and the Cowboys at 3:30 on Fox for all of us. What did I think? UConn? Oh, like the car? That's funny. Yeah, no, not UConn like the car. Don't worry, Chad. And we also have the Dolphins Packers at 7:20 on NBC and Peacock. These are great games, honestly. At least the first one is and the last one is. I don't know about Giants Cowboys. That one's a little touchy just because both teams are struggling right now with backup quarterbacks, and I don't really know. Those two franchises are going through it. And then, of course, for the NBA, since I am a Chicago sports fan, we're going to cover the Celtics versus Bulls, a tale as old as time, as I like to call it. But unfortunately, a very different look. Instead of the historical rivalry that would be there, it's looking more like a really well put together team versus an organization that doesn't really know what they're doing. And then, of course, we're going to round it out with the college football rankings, and I'm going to make playoff predictions, who I think is in, who I think is getting out. Once again, these are all my opinions, so this isn't a fact. I'm just going based off the statistics and my personal feelings on it. So let's start with the NFL. Obviously, Thanksgiving Day, NFL, you got to have Cowboys and Detroit. They are actually always playing on Thanksgiving. That is like something they have done historically, and that's something that they continue to do. So always count on the Lions and the Cowboys to play on Thanksgiving. Let's talk about the Battle of the North. I call this David versus Goliath. I call it that for multiple reasons. Bears versus Lions, 11:30 on CBS. That's a great way to kick off your Thanksgiving. Biggest thing about it is the Bears obviously have a new offensive coordinator. What's going on, Julie? It's good to see you in here. So the Bears are 4-7. They're last in the NFC North. They do have a lot of upside. Like I said, they have a new offensive coordinator. That means new opportunities. That means new schemes, new things you can try out, and especially because you're looking like you're not going to make the playoffs. You've got a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams who's showing a lot of promise. You've got a lot of good skill players around him. Offensive line is a big struggle, but you've got a lot of key points that you can really hit on here. So I think with a new offensive coordinator, if you can figure it out, start trying new things, start getting in a rhythm with Williams, maybe not this year, but next year you're looking at a decent team that could potentially be at least a mid-tier team in the NFC, if not topping, obviously the Lions kind of came out of nowhere. They had a great year last year, but nobody expected them to be 10-1 this year. So new offense coordinator, big things. Williams is at a 62.6% completion rate. Not great. That's really kind of bottom of the pack. And then you also have 11 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's got to take care of that quarterback or the ball. You don't like to see your star quarterback, especially somebody that you gave up so much for, to all of a sudden have kind of like a 2-to-1 ratio touchdown to interception rate. That's not something you want to see. You want to see something more in the 3 to 4 range, if not better. Obviously, we've seen good quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes this year, who's also struggling with a lot of interceptions, not throwing a lot of touchdowns, but is still obviously Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if that's going to play out the same way for Caleb Williams. I think if you're a Chicago fan, you're obviously hoping so, but biggest things that I see with Williams, he's the most sacked quarterback in the league. He's been sacked 44 times. I mean, that is insane, especially because he's supposed to be your franchise. He's supposed to be the guy that you're relying on going forward. I mean, that's just not a good look. Once again, really, really bad look for the Bears going forward. I mean, you don't want to have your star quarterback who you gave I don't know how many million to. You don't want to have your star quarterback getting destroyed 44 times. I mean, every time you take a hit, that's a big dude. That's probably a 200, 300-pound dude tackling this guy. That's not a good look. So definitely got to be aware of that. Definitely have to start doing some more stuff to protect him. I don't know what you need to do, but they need to figure it out because it's not good. Caleb can't be taking hits like that. He needs to stay on his feet, scramble more, but we'll get more into that in a little bit. And he hasn't played well on the road. He's got 2 touchdowns. 4 of his 5 interceptions this year have come on the road, including a 57.1% completion rate. That's not very good. I mean, you don't want to see a guy, once again, you don't want to see your star quarterback struggling with passing because you're such a pass-oriented team. I mean, look at this. Ranked 22nd in points per game, 8th in opponent's points per game, so your defense is playing well, but 22nd in rushing yards and 25th in passing yards. I mean, there's only 32 teams, I think, in the NFL, so you're in the bottom ranked for 4 out of 4 of these categories, or 3 out of 4 categories. That's not good. You got to score more. Obviously, new offense coordinator, so time will tell. But your defense is playing stellar. You have to reward your defense. Your defense can't go out there. It's something that, as an Illinois fan, University of Illinois fan, that's something that I've always struggled with. So if you're a Bears fan and an Illinois fan, you're going through it because this is something that's always been there. You know, defense plays well, offense isn't there. Offense is great, defense sucks. So you got to find a way to put it all together. But yeah, you can't have your star rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, only completing half of his passes. That means 1 out of every 2. It's getting dropped. He's not getting it there. He's getting sacked. He's 44 times, and throwing interceptions. You can't allow him to throw 4 interceptions on the road. I mean, they're just going to pick him apart. This is not college. Like, I understand he was a stellar college ball player, but this isn't college. It's a very different game, and he needs a lot of things. Thoughts on the Bears head coach? Some people think he needs to go. He absolutely needs to go. Eberflus is not the guy that needs to figure it out. He's a defensive coach, and I appreciate you commenting. That means a lot. He's a defensive coach that is not there to develop a quarterback. And actually, I was listening to another podcast or sports talk show that was kind of hitting on that, in the idea that Caleb Williams is trying to prove himself. He's trying to be a rookie quarterback. He's got a lot of pressure on him. You know, he just got paid a ton of money to come to the Bears. He knows they're a struggling organization. People of Chicago are fed up with their sports teams. I mean, they just had Jerry Reinsdorf with the Bulls, Blackhawks, and White Sox. Okay, all struggling. So Chicago fans and you know, the Cubs are struggling as well. They're kind of a mid-tier team. So the Bears were kind of everybody's like beaming light of hope with Caleb Williams coming in. So you have a new rookie quarterback that's trying to prove himself, has a lot of pressure on him. Then you've got a head coach that's already on the hot seat before Williams takes one snap. Okay. Then you have so much pressure from Bears fans alike, from anybody and everybody. People are pissed, okay? They have every right to be pissed because he hasn't done well. He's trying to, Caleb Williams trying to prove himself. Head coach is not developing him. He's just letting him get hit 44 times. I mean, once again, Williams is your future. You put everything into Williams. So if he gets injured, a season-ending injury is not something uncommon nowadays. So he gets injured, we're looking at, you're destroying at least 2 or 3 more years of his development and his career, and therefore the Bears. Eberflus needs to go, though. I know it was a long spiel for you, but Eberflus needs to go. On the opposite end, we've got the Goliath. We've got the Detroit Lions, probably the absolute best team in the NFL right now. They're 10-1, so they have the best record in the NFL. Goff is leading in completion percentage. He's got a 72.95 completion rate, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. You want to see that a little lower. He's having a career year. Jared Goff on the Rams, this is who we kind of got used to. If you guys remember that famous game against Patrick Mahomes where they scored 50 points each. Well, this is even better for Goff. Personally, I think he's got a personal record of 72.9% completion rate. He's got a career best and league leading best, 109.9 QBR, which is quarterback rating, and he's averaging 9 yards a pass. All of those are career numbers. Look at his. I included in here his career average. Okay, his career average completion rate is 65.3%. So he's performing 7.6% better. He's completing 7.6% more passes than his average. Okay, so it's normal to maybe have a deviation of 3, but 7 is even double that. He's also having a career year for QBR. His career average has been 94.7. That's no slouch, but 109.9 over 11 games is insane. And I don't think that's going to stop this week. His passing yards have been 7.5 yards. That's no slouch either, but 9 yards again. Blowing his career numbers out of the water. Goff is, honestly, in my opinion right now, kind of leading that MVP race. I don't really know who else is up there, but as of right now, if he can get those interceptions down and get those touchdowns up, there's just no comparison. He's the best quarterback in the league right now, and people just need to accept that. And I'm not a Goff fan. That's a big thing. I'm not a big Jared Goff guy, but he's proven a lot of people wrong. Detroit Lions, first in points per game. They're averaging 32.7 points per game. That's a lot of offense. Second in opponents' points per game. That's a great combination. If you're leading the league in points per game and you're holding opponents to the least amount of points per game, that's a winning recipe. If opponents aren't scoring, they can't win. And obviously for the Bears, that spells trouble, considering that you're 22nd and you're only scoring 20.1 points per game, and this is the second best defense if we're going by points per game in the league. That's a problem. Once again, they're fourth in the rushing yards per game, averaging 150.8, and third in passing yards per game. Goff is averaging around 259.1 yards per game. Once again, this offense and this defense, insane. The secondary is a little questionable. We'll touch on that, but as far as as solid as you can be, this is the team to watch. I really believe that they are going to be they're going to spell trouble, and they're going to challenge. I don't know if we're going to get the three-peat. I know a lot of people are talking about the three-peat for Kansas City. I don't know if we're going to be looking at that or not. I'll be honest. Detroit is going to be a tough team to take down. Sorry, I'm just checking everything. Can you guys still hear me, see me? Everything looking good? It's hard for me to like look on this end just because I don't really have a way to kind of check. I'd have to pull out my phone, but just making sure. Okay. And if you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that, just let me know in the chat below. I've got it pulled up so we can make sure that we're staying on top of things here. For the Lions, we'll touch back on the Lions here. The Lions defense wins games and championships. No doubt about it, right? We always hear that being said in like the corniest way, but it truly does. Like if your opponents can't score and you've got the best offense probably on average by the NFL standards, it's hard to beat. So here's some insane stats that I found actually about the Detroit Lions that's like currently going on. How do you think KC now is comparing to last year specifically? They're a complete different team. Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes, but he's struggling a lot in the pocket. He's throwing a lot of interceptions that you don't normally see out of him. He's scrambling a lot more, and I think that's because his offensive line is just not that good, which could play into a factor of why he's throwing so many picks. And then he's lost out on a lot of starts, so like he's playing with backups and even like backups. Travis Kelce, obviously the star that he is, he's like performing well stats wise, but he's not as, it's a lot harder to make him the big impact that he is when you don't have your number one, number two, and even number three wide receivers out there, all of them being injured. Hollywood Brown, season-ending injury before he even took one snap as a Kansas City Chief. He went down in the offseason. You're missing out on Rashee Rice. He's struggling. He got a knee injury. He was going off earlier, but he's gone now. He had that knee injury that Patrick Mahomes actually caused. Then you have Xavier Worthy, who's still playing well. Like, he's a rookie. He's going to have a lot of mistakes, and I know they want him to be like Tyreek Hill number 2, but that's a large footstep to kind of cover, and I don't really know if he's the guy. Like, he's showing a lot of upside, but we'll see what happens. And then Isaiah Pacheco, their star running back, who they always relied so heavily on, he's not there. He had a season-ending injury, so they're struggling. Kansas City now is very different than Kansas City a year ago, especially 2 years ago. A year ago, even though, like if we focus on just last year Kansas City was running kind of backups and everything, and they kind of had this team that people were like, I don't really know if they're good enough to make the Super Bowl. They're good enough to make the playoffs, but maybe not the Super Bowl. And what do you know? They surprised everybody and ended up winning the Super Bowl. I don't know if that's going to happen this year just because there's so many other good teams out there, but you can't ignore the fact that they were on like a win streak of like 9. They went 9-0, and that's once again with Patrick Mahomes not playing well, a ton of backups, a ton of free agent signings to try and fill roster spots, an O-line that's struggling, and a defense that is good, but I don't know if they're great. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, as time continues on with the NFL playoffs taking shape, which we'll talk a little bit about here in this presentation, but I don't know. It's really hard to predict. They're so unpredictable. Andy Reid, their coach, is so good at utilizing players, developing players, and making sure people play their role. And Patrick Mahomes, I'm not a big Patrick Mahomes fan, but that guy, he knows how to win. That's and if you know how to win, it's a lot easier to win. But yeah, for the Lions and Bears, I have defense wins championships in games. And that's because they haven't allowed any touchdowns in back-to-back games for the first time since 1999. So that is 8 quarters. Each quarter is 15 minutes. So each quarter is 15 minutes. And they have played 8 quarters, okay? That is a ton of time to pass through, and they haven't allowed 6 points. They haven't allowed a touchdown to be scored by the opponent. I don't care who you're playing. this is not college football to where like it's like you have a massive, USC versus a small school like Southern Methodist something else. It's very different, very very different. The NFL, this is the best of the best. These guys are the best at what they do. They've been the best, and they've held them. They've held the top players and the top scorers to no touchdowns against them in 2 games straight. That's just incredible. 10 straight quarters without a touchdown, so even more time. So that's 10 quarters. So that's 2.5 games. 2.5 games they have not surrendered a single touchdown. That's a lot. Haven't surrendered a second half point in 3 straight games. So that just means if you scored against the Lions, it happened in the first half. That means they're going in the locker room in the second half. They're coming out with a better game plan, and you're not scoring. Once again, this spells trouble for somebody like the Bears, because if you're the Bears and you're already struggling with the 22nd and 25th offense put together, so let's say you're probably like 23rd, 24th overall in offense around the league. You're taking on a team that holds opponents to 16.6 points per game on average. I mean, it just spells problems. That's why I really believe in this title, David versus Goliath. If the Bears somehow figured out a way to make this an interesting game, I think it's interesting just because I love watching Caleb Williams. I think he's an exciting prospect. And I mean, Jared Goff is playing out of his mind in a lot of ways, so I think it'll be a good game, but I think we all know the result. At the end of the day, it's going to be probably the Lions. I have the Lions winning by at least a touchdown. Honestly, if we're being real, I have them winning by more than 10 points, and I don't really know if the Bears are going to be the team that breaks these stats. I don't know if the Bears are going to be the team to break the touchdown. No touchdowns. Yeah. Moving on. Okay, here's the keys to the game. So, breaking it down for you guys. For the Bears, key to the game. Got to protect the president. You got to protect your franchise quarterback. The O-line cannot let Caleb Williams be under pressure every part of the game. It's something that we saw and we know has been a common thing for people facing the Bears. They're just like, if there's one thing we're going to do, we're playing the Bears, we're blitzing. We're putting that quarterback under duress. We're going to go after him. And they do that because the Bears obviously are just not the best at stopping it. So the O-line has to stop the rush. The Lions are going to be blitzing. Everybody knows that your O-line sucks. So what do you think they're going to do? They're not going to be nice about it. They're going to come after you. And once again, you can't let Caleb Williams keep taking hits. I mean, you're just asking for an injury to a guy that you spent close to $100 million on and are going to spend a couple more $100 million on in the future if this really is the franchise guy. Another thing, I mean, it's also on Caleb. He has to be able to scramble. And really, with this new offensive coordinator, it's hard for other teams to predict what he's going to do. So you want to probably have some design quarterback runs. We started seeing Caleb Williams running the ball in these last couple of games that were designed runs, like fake handoff, zone reads. I mean, that opens up a lot of playbook. It's very college football, but Caleb Williams is a rookie, so he's used to college football. Once again, you don't want to see him taking hits, but I mean, you need to get those. You need to get some yards. You can't allow, which leads us into the next point. You can't allow third down and a mile to go. There's just no reason why you should be third in anything more than 5. And I know that you can rush the ball twice and you can get like 3 yards, so that leaves you like 3rd and 7. And once again, I know that the Detroit Lions defense is stellar, but like you can't sit there and go 3 and out over and over and over again. It's going to lead to a lot of problems. It's going to lead to a lot of third and long, or putting Caleb Williams in spots where he thinks he has to make a hero play, and Yeah, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. He's either going to take a sack like we saw in Minnesota, where he held onto the ball way too long and it cost him the game, or he's going to throw a really bad pass trying to force something down the field, and none of that is good. So, once again, you can't allow third down and a mile to go. You have to create third and short scenarios. The Lions defense, once again, being stellar. They second, in opponents' points per game, but also it's because on third down, they don't allow people to convert. They have a 29.84% conversion rate for offenses against them. So less than 1 out of 3 times. If you're on third down, whether it's third and a mile or third and 1, you're not converting against this Detroit Lions defense. So that's a big problem. You just really want to see Caleb Williams and maybe using some screens, maybe doing something else, like mixing it up. You're going to have to get really creative against this Detroit Lions team. You want to see defense. The defensive side, you got to stop the run. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are probably the best 1-2 punch in the league right now. So if they're the best 1-2 punch in the league right now, I mean, I know the Bears defense is really good, but this once again kind of comes back on the offense. You can't go 3 and out. You can't not let your defense. You got to let your defense rest. If they're not resting, I mean, how much can you really do when you're 300 pounds? Very nice. What up, David? How much can you really do though when you're 300 pounds and you got to run 90 yards in 5 minutes and then get back up and do it all over again in less than 2 minutes because your offense stalled out? Like, that's very annoying, and I'm seeing a lot of, once again, this comes back on Eberflus, comes back on the offense. You gotta have an answer. You gotta, even if you're just like wasting time, like you gotta allow your defense to get some breaks. So you gotta stop the run. You can't allow them to dominate the possession. The Lions have been known this year to just run the clock down, run long possessions, like 14 plays, 18 plays for 12 minutes. Like, I mean, you want to keep it a low-scoring game. If you're the Bears, I think that favors the Bears if it's a low-scoring game, but you have to be able to have long possessions yourself, and you can't allow the Detroit Lions to have like 12, 13, 14 play possessions and then they score a touchdown. That just leaves you no time. If they take 12 minutes in a quarter and there's only 15, you have 3 minutes to answer in that quarter. That's not a good look. It's once again not a recipe that you can really make last. You have to force him into third and long. Detroit has a 46.83% conversion rate, so almost half of the time, if it's third and long or third and short, Detroit is going to convert on third down. And on fourth down, they have 62.5%. So 2 out of 3 times, even if you stop them on third down, if it's fourth down and they go for it, 2 out of 3 times they're going to make it. So you have to put them in uncomfortable positions to where, third and 5, third and 7, third and 10, third and 20, you have to put them in those kind of positions so that even if they pick up 5 yards, 8 yards, it's not like they have a first down and you have to keep going. If they're not going to do a 4th and 5. That's probably just not going to happen. You also have to force Goff to scramble. He only has 39 rushing yards all season. He's not really known to be as much of a scrambler. He's very much a pocket passer kind of guy. But if you force him to scramble, that puts him in uncomfortable positions. You would think maybe he throws a little more interceptions. He's at a 2-to-1 ratio with touchdowns to interceptions, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So it does create opportunities for you to possibly have your secondary step up, get some interceptions, or it's at least deflections and sacks. You could start sacking him, if he starts holding on to the ball too long, and we've seen the Lions struggle sometimes with giving up plays like that. So you really want to see the defense from the Bears kind of give them different looks, different blitz packages, put him under some pressure, really get him uncomfortable in that pocket and force him into hopefully some bad throws. For the Lions, on the Lions side, what can they do? It's very simple. It's obviously we had the Bears sorry, I know it's a little backwards for me. We have the Bears on this side. The Lions, as you can tell, much, much shorter of a list. They don't need a laundry list to win this game. First thing, don't play with your food. Keep it simple. Blitz Williams, he knows it's coming. You have no faith in the Bears? So do a lot of Chicago people. I don't know if you should have faith this year, but I think going forward, if they fire Eberflus, you should have some faith. Anyways, this game, I don't know. I don't know if this is the game to watch if you have no faith in the Bears. It might just be a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. If you think they're going to suck, they're probably going to suck because this is not the game for the bounce back for the Bears. For the Lions, anyway, don't play with your food. Keep it simple. The Bears know you're going to blitz. You know you're going to blitz. Everybody watching the game knows you're going to blitz. Just do it. Just put Williams under some pressure, force him to make rookie mistakes, force him to make those decisions for those rookie mistakes. He's obviously thrown 4 interceptions on the road and only 2 touchdowns on the road. So he's struggling. Whether it's the crowd noise, whether it's uncomfortable being anywhere else other than Chicago, I don't know. But Caleb Williams has not figured out how to really win on the road. And as a rookie, that's something that other teams are going to exploit. Sonic and Knuckles unite. Once again, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, best running back duo in football right now. So they're averaging 150.8 yards a game between the two of them, and they both are at 4.7 rushing yards per attempt. So that means every time they're getting the ball, they're getting close to 5 yards an attempt. And if it's 1st and 10 and you run the ball twice, that means it's 3rd and like inches. Can't have that if you're the Bears, but if you're the Lions, you love to see that because once again, it just allows Goff to be able to throw the ball. You got to commit 8 people to the box. You got to have 8 people in there trying to stop the run, whether it's Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery. Well, guess what? Amon-Ra St. Brown is running a post up the middle of the field. You only got one guy on him. You can't double team him because you got to commit so many people to the run. So the Lions, once again, keep it simple. You love to see Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I honestly think Jahmyr Gibbs could be looking at 70 yards, 80 yards, if not 100. David Montgomery, 50, 60, and I think he's probably going to score. MVP time for Goff. I mean, Jared Goff, once again, is probably the lead runner in my eyes of who's going to win the MVP just because of his impact on the team. And once again, his career numbers are, he's having a career year, right? So biggest thing for Goff is he can't like crumble under the limelight. Everybody's going to be watching. It's Thanksgiving, obviously. You're in Detroit. You got to use your players. You've got star players, Pro Bowl players in Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. You've got a lot of weapons. Use them. Don't be stupid. Don't try and like solidify yourself in history and be like, oh, I'm the best. Keep it simple. Once again, Jared Goff. It's time to prove he's the MVP. This is how you shut the naysayers up. Destroy the Bears. Don't just beat them. Destroy them. You want to see, if you're a Lions fan, anything less than probably a 2-score win is a failure. You don't want to see him panic in the pocket. We talked about how the Bears need to rush him, need to put him in uncomfortable positions. For Goff, it's the exact opposite. Don't panic. Stay in the pocket. If you take a sack, you take a sack. But switch up your scheme. If you don't feel comfortable, the Lions have been probably the best team going into the locker room and coming out. At halftime, they're the best team. You don't want to face the Lions in the second half. You may dominate them in the first half, but you're not doing it to them in the second half. So don't panic in the pocket. Stay composed. Stay on top of it. Stay composed. No. But yeah, you don't want to see Jared Goff doing anything stupid with the ball. All right, let's talk about the unfortunate game that we all are going to be subject to, which is the New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this is something that used to be really good when you had like Romo and you had Eli Manning, and within the last couple of years, it's not been the greatest. Unfortunately, this is going to be competitive for all the wrong reasons. That's why I have it titled "The Lowest of the Low." Save yourself the trouble. This might be the best time to grab a plate of food, turn on a Christmas movie or a Thanksgiving. I don't know if there's a Thanksgiving movie, but like whatever you can do, I don't know if this is the game that people are expecting. It honestly might be competitive because they're both so bad. The Giants, Cowboys, 3:30 p.m. on Fox. The Cowboys are 4-7. Obviously, not great. Jerry's world is crumbling beneath him. Dak Prescott out for the game to ignore. Absolutely the game to ignore. Yeah, if you're like, hey, let's do something, this is the time to go and run groceries or something like that. I don't know. Clean up plates. Honestly, I'd start vacuuming my lawn to ignore this game. That's how far I'm going. Dak Prescott out. Cooper Rush is going to start. He has a 61.1% completion rate. Not good. Bottom of the table. 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 79.1 QBR rating. Not good. He's a backup for a reason. They're the Cowboys, 22nd in points per game, averaging 20.1 points, 31st out of 32nd in opponents' points per game. They're allowing 29 points per game to opponents, 31st in rushing yards. Only having 82.5. Once again, this is not college. This is professional football. So the fact that these professional football, this is a real stat, that you're having less than 100 rushing yards in a game and you're allowing opponents to score 29 points on you, whether it's home or away. That's really bad. For the Giants, I don't know how they have 4 wins, I'll be honest. The Giants, it gets even worse. They're 2-9. Tommy DeVito, shout out University of Illinois, big Illinois guy, but Tommy DeVito is backup for a reason as well. Cowboys had bad juju from the JP versus Mike Tyson fight being held in their arena. It was bad for pro football. This is actually insane. It is really insane. Unfortunately for the Cowboys, they can't blame Jake Paul or Mike Tyson for them being that bad because they started losing games before that was even held. That's, I guess, like, if that's their fallback, like, it's even worse because that fight sucked. I don't really know if Jerry's world is the best place to be holding fights. I mean, that fight absolutely blew ass. It was really bad. Unfortunately, we were probably all forced to watch it because Netflix was throwing it down our throats. It's bad. But yeah, the Giants, it gets even worse. Tommy DeVito, he's a backup for a reason. Daniel Jones obviously just got let go. And actually, he just signed today. I saw this before we came on. I made sure to make a note of it here. He just signed with the Vikings. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him because they've got a great quarterback room now. Sam Darnold has played really well this year. He's starting to kind of come down to the Sam Darnold we remember and we know from the Jets, but we'll see if he levels out. J.J. McCarthy obviously just had season-ending surgery. He's their 9th overall pick from this last draft. He's their future. J.J. McCarthy is the future for the Minnesota Vikings. Anything else is probably stupid. Daniel Jones is going to be a great veteran quarterback probably to come in there and maybe help them win 2 or 3 games if Sam Darnold starts sucking again. But yeah, for the Giants, it just spells trouble because Tommy DeVito, once again, 67.7% completion rate. Not terrible, not great. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's played like 2 games this season. Can't throw a touchdown or an interception. I guess that's not good or bad. He has an 83.9 QBR. The Giants are the bottom of the league in points per game. They're averaging 2 touchdowns per game at 14.8 points per game. Their defense is mid-tier, allowing 22.9 points per game, and their rushing is 19th, so also middle tier, which suffered a lot when they got rid of Saquon. The Giants, honestly, if the Bears weren't the worst team, the Giants are really bad too. 115.9 rushing yards a game. That's what happens when you give up the best the best running back in the game. Saquon Barkley is having a career year in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is probably going to the playoffs, and they're looking like somebody that could start doing some upsetting. So they're an interesting piece. The Giants are clearing house. They've given up on this season. The Cowboys have given up on this season. It ain't looking good. This is, once again, not the game that you want to like be like, oh, I have to catch this. I don't care if I catch the Bears, Lions. I don't care if I catch the Dolphins, Packers. Let me watch the Giants, Cowboys. Do that if you truly hate yourself. Lowest of the low keys of the game. So for the Cowboys, you have to have a run game. You can't like just sit there and hope Cooper Rush throws the ball and he finds CeeDee Lamb or Turpin or whoever else they got out there. You gotta let Zeke and Dowdle do something. I don't know if it's even in the rushing game for them, but they're under 1,000 yards combined. How do you have a professional football team 13 weeks into the season and your run game has less than 1,000 yards? Okay, so that means like on average, once again, you have like 82.5%, or 82.5 rushing yards a game. That's bad. Nothing goes better with dry turkey than the absolute disaster of this game. Honestly, this is probably like the boiled chicken of NFL games. This is the game that you take the plate and you put it upside down in the trash can and you just like tuck it away so nobody sees you throw it out. The Cowboys, once again, like I said, you gotta have a run game. You gotta let Zeke and Dowdle do something, at least have an impact. And you only have 2 touchdowns on the season, so they have 2 rushing touchdowns on the season. Teams know you're gonna throw the ball. Teams know that you're not going to run the ball. That makes it a lot easier to plan versus when they're like, oh yeah, they're gonna run the ball here. No, it's the Cowboys. They're gonna throw it. You got to win the turnover battle. Overall, the Cowboys have a -9 turnover ratio on the season. That means that opponents combined have won 9 more turnovers on the season against the Cowboys. So the Cowboys are turning it over a shit ton. The Giants only have 1 game without a fumble this season. So this all plays into your hands. If you're the Cowboys, you have a really bad defense that's struggling, but the Giants have a really bad offense that's struggling. They've only, like I said, they only had 1 game without a fumble this season. That plays into your hands if you're the Cowboys. They have 24 turnovers so far. The Giants do. They have in interceptions and fumbles combined, they have 24 turnovers. They have a -6 turnover ratio. So the Giants, not nearly as bad when it comes to the turnover ratio in comparison, but they do have 24 turnovers in over 13 weeks. That's almost 2 a game. So that, once again, plays into your hands if you're the Cowboys. Donde está CeeDee Lamb? Where the fuck is CeeDee Lamb? We're not going to act like this guy is not one of the best wide receivers in the game. And you can't find him? I don't know if you need him to be taking direct snaps. But you got to get him the ball. How can you let your star player that you just paid a shit ton of money to not get the ball? It's just bad. He's having a career low year. He's having the lowest career averages in yards per reception, and he's only had 4 touchdowns. This is his worst year since his rookie year, which has been like 5 or 6 years. That's not a good look. Not especially when you just paid that man like $100+ million. You're going to pay him, play him. Special teams, special players. That's right, brother. Special teams equals special plays. If there's an upside for the Cowboys, it's their special teams. Turpin is a game changer. I mean, he's got like 3 touchdowns. Yeah, 3 touchdowns on special teams this year. That's a lot. That's a lot considering the rule changes that we've had, considering everything else that's happened with the kickoff and the changes in the rules about punt returns, blah, blah, blah. Turpin's a game changer. Dude's fast as shit. You got to hope that he scores 1 touchdown for you because obviously your offense ain't doing it. So special teams need to show up. Even the ace got to get played at some point. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's no point of holding pocket aces if you're just going to fold. Like, holding pocket aces and then just mucking it. You know, being like, no. Not the time. Like, no, you got to figure out a way to get your star players involved. For the Giants, key to the game, you got to convert on third down. You only have a 37.91% third down conversion. So 1 out of 3 times you're making it. The other 2 times you're flopping. Dallas has a stingy defense when it comes to third down. They have a really bad defense overall in points per game. But on third down, if they're getting you to third down, they're like, yeah, we're going to stop you. It's like buying shoes and not wearing them. Yeah, what's the point? You just spend a lot of money just to look at them. Dallas only allows 35.08% conversion, so 1 out of 3 times. That's not a bad margin. Honestly, if you're Dallas, you'd like to see that a little lower, closer to the Lions, like 20-some percent. But 35%, I don't think third down conversions is where Dallas is getting beat. I think they're getting beat on those first and tens, second and shorts and whatever. I think their defense just needs to step up. But if you're the Giants, you got to convert on third down. Got to, once again, just like the Bears, got to get to that third and short. You got to win the turnover battle. We already talked about it. They're -6 on their turnover ratio this season. Cowboys are -9, so both teams are very, very very prone to fumbling and to interceptions and just not holding onto the ball. They only have 1 game without a fumble this season. You got to hold on to that ball. I don't know if you need like sticky glue or something to your arms or whatever, but you got to figure out a way to hold on to that ball. Gold Rush. So Cooper Rush, the backup quarterback that is starting right now for the Cowboys in replacement of Dak Prescott, who's recovering from an injury. Gold Rush. If you're the Giants, Cooper Rush has been sacked 7 times in the last 3 games. That's a lot. This man is getting pummeled. Get back there. You have a decent defense. The Giants had like a mid-tier defense or something like that, if not better. Get back there. Rush the shit out of Rush. Per Pro Football Focus, is something I found. Rush is tied for the 18th worst in the league right now in offensive under pressure rating. That means when Cooper Rush is being put under some kind of duress or under some kind of pressure from the defense, he's the 18th worst quarterback in the league, including backups, by the way. This is not just like, 18 out of 20, 18 out of 32, that's middle tier. No, we're talking about anybody that has touched the ball this season that has been a quarterback. He's the 18th worst. That's not a good look for the Cowboys. The Cowboys have also allowed 30 total sacks in 13 weeks. It's why Dak Prescott is injured. It's why they're struggling. This offensive line cannot figure it out. If you're the Giants, exploit that. This is your key to the game right here. Taking down Cooper Rush. Once again, winning that turnover battle. All right, let's talk Packers versus the Dolphins. Sink or swim, right? We're talking about the Dolphins here. Are the Packers for real? These are all questions that are on our minds. So this is the 7:20. This is the night game on NBC and Peacock. It'll be a good game. Packers are 8-2. Jordan Love is averaging 61.8% completion rate with 18 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, averaging a 92 QBR. You'd like to see those numbers a lot more. You'd like to see those numbers a lot more up. But he's making a lot of mistakes. I don't know what's going on with Jordan Love, but it's not the Jordan Love we were used to seeing, especially before the injury. But now it's even worse. 61.8% completion rate is not good. That might be below. That's like below Tommy DeVito. That's borderline Cooper Rush and Caleb Williams, who we just were nagging on, saying, protect the ball. 11 interceptions. 11 in 13 weeks that have been played. Almost 1 a game. That's bad. He's tied for the second most interceptions in the league. The only guy with more is Geno Smith, who threw one last week. And Jordan Love had 2 interceptions that were dropped. So Jordan Love probably would have been first if the defense last week from the Niners held on to 2 of those interceptions. So he's tied for second most. He's 4th worst completion rate in the league right now. The 4th worst. That's really bad. That's not something you want to see from your franchise quarterback if you're the Packers. It's not something you want to see from a guy that you also, once again, invested a lot of money into. This is the guy that you put as like your leader going into the next 6 seasons, basically. You don't want to see the guy averaging 11, second most interceptions in the league, fourth worst completion rate. You need to see those numbers on the other end. On the upside, the Packers are 4-2 at home, so their 2 losses have come at home, and they are at home again for this game. So is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I mean, they are playing a Florida team. It's looking like it's going to be a cold week. That kind of plays into your factor if you're the Packers. You don't really think about it, but Florida teams traditionally do not do well in the snow and like in those cold conditions because they're so used to the Florida weather. Then on the other side, if you're used to that cold weather and you practice in it all the time and you're the Packers, kind of plays into you. So something to think about. They are 8th in points per game with 26.2. Opponents' points per game, they're at 20.3. Oh, I didn't put a number in there. They're 3rd in the rushing yards with 151.6 and 14th in passing yards with 238.5 per game. So, a lot of good things here. Top 10 in rushing yards per game and in points per game. And they're pretty stingy on defense with 20.3 points per game given up on to the opponents. I mean, you love seeing that a little lower, but I mean, that's still pretty damn good. Midwesterners know how to handle the cold for real. You're built for it. If you are a Packers fan or a Bears fan or a Minnesota fan, like, I mean, I know Detroit plays inside now, but I mean, those are conditions that you can't get anywhere else. That's why having a home field advantage in the playoffs, if you're an NFC North team like the Packers, the Bears, the Vikings, the Lions, can be such a big factor, is because these guys that are coming in, like the 49ers, these California teams or whatever, they're not used to playing in 30 degrees when it's like, snowing out or negative wind chill in January, February. So I know weather is not always like the key thing, but it could play a factor into this game. Once again, the Packers have had 2 losses at home, though, so we'll see kind of what team shows up is really the best way I can put it. What Packers team are we really getting here? For the Dolphins, they're 5-6, very much underperforming this year. They do have Tua, who has a 73.3% completion rate, which is his personal best, a 13-4 touchdown interception rate, and 106.3%, 106.3 QBR. I mean, that's really damn good. He's 5th best in the league in QBR. He leads the league in completion percentage, and he's tied for the 3rd lowest interceptions in the league. I mean, these are all great indicators of a great quarterback. Problem is, can he stay healthy? I mean, he's the scariest person to watch play football because every time he takes a hit, you just kind of like, ooh, is this the time he's like done for? I mean, he's had like 4 concussions, and he's only been in the league for like 6 years. So, Dolphins are also 2-3 on the road. Once again, they're a Florida team playing in Green Bay over Thanksgiving in the cold. Don't know if that's going to... Yeah, you got to take care of your brain. There's more to life than football. Don't know if the 2-3 record will really matter or if the weather will play a factor, but I think it will. They are 24th in points per game scored at 19.5. Remember, Tua was injured for a couple of games, so his percentages and his stuff doesn't translate as well to the offense because obviously they played like 4 games without him. Their defense has been really good, only allowing 21.5 points per game to opponents, which puts them at 11th. 16 in rushing yards per game with 116.8. And 20th in passing yards per game with 225.2. Once again, those are all stats without Tua being there for like 3 or 4 games. So take them as you will. Tua's been playing really well. The Dolphins, when he is playing, kind of have been playing here and there. So something to keep an eye on for sure going forward. Keys to the game. You need to see the Packers protect the ball, specifically Jordan Love. Jordan Love is tied for the 2nd most interceptions in the league with 11, and him and Jacobs, even though Jacobs is a stellar player, probably 2nd or 3rd best if not fourth best running back in the game right now. I mean, you got Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon. But Josh Jacobs and Jordan Love have had a combined 5 fumbles this season. From your 2-star guys, your running back and your quarterback, that's not a good look. Once again, these are guys that you're paying hundreds of millions of dollars to. You want to see them protect the ball. What's the point of getting a 90-yard rush if you fumble the ball? What's the point if you can throw 60 yards down the field, but it's to the defense? Protect the ball. Jordan Love did have 3 of his fumbles this season against the Lions. So it's also something to keep an eye on. Once again, when he's under pressure against a good defense, which the Dolphins have at least above average defense, he fumbled 3 times against the Lions. That's not something you want to see. They do still somehow have a +8 turnover ratio on the season. So it plays into their hands to protect the ball because their defense obviously creates plenty of opportunities and plenty of takeaways. Packers need to score first and score fast. When they do score first, they're 8-2. When the opponent scores first, they're 1-1. Oh, well, yeah, I fucked up the record there. That's my bad. It's my bad. But when they score first, they're 8-2. When the opponent scores first, they're 1-1. That's not good. You don't want to get into this area. You don't want to get when the opponent scores first and you're sitting there trying to figure it out and adjust your game. You want to score first. You want to keep the lead, stay in the lead. For the Dolphins, stars shine bright when it's dark. So it's a dark time to be a Dolphins fan. Shout out my boy CJ. They're 5-6. Tua, though, is having a career best year in completion rate and QBR, which he leads the league in both. That's something to look forward to. If Tua can stay healthy, that means, we can build off of this. If he doesn't stay healthy, that's a whole different thing. It's a downhill year. Tyreek Hill, we got to talk about Tyreek, right? Tyreek Hill is having a career low in receiving yards, targets, and receptions so far. Typically, he plays best in the warm weather. That's another thing that plays into a factor here. Once again, Florida teams playing in Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, these cold places, especially in November, December, January, February. These are not places that you want to hang around in if you're a Florida guy. And Tyreek does not play well in the cold. He plays best in the warm weather. So is this his bounce back game? He'll be fighting a lot of history for himself. It's an uphill battle. No pun intended with his last name, of course. And then you want to see him rise to the occasion. You need to see somebody else step up. You need to say A-Chain or A-Chain. He's averaging 4.3 yards per carry. That's not bad. He's got 8 total touchdowns and receptions and rushing touchdowns combined. Biggest thing here, 0 fumbles. He is taking care of the football. He's running the ball. He's taking care of the football. Get him the ball. Figure out a way to get A-Chain the ball. Jalen Waddle, he's averaging 13.4 yards per catch. He's got 10 receptions of over 20 yards this season. He's leading the team in both. He's doing better than Tyreek. He's doing better than A-Chain. You need to get Jalen Waddle more involved in the offense. Tua needs to find him. Tua needs to find a way to get him into the screens, doing something. Because Jalen Waddle is, when he's on, he's on. And so far, he's been on. 13.4 yards per catch. That's a first down every time. 10 receptions of over 20 yards. That means every time. That means 10 times this season, he's gotten 20-plus yards for you. Get the man the ball. All right, now we're going to move on to the NBA. We're just going to talk about one of the games. I know there's a ton of games being played in the NBA. We're just going to talk about the Chicago Bulls versus the Celtics, the champs versus the rebuild. Obviously, the defending champs, the Boston Celtics, are coming, and they're playing against the Chicago Bulls. If you're a Bulls fan, this is not the holiday thanks you want to give. Maybe to Jerry Reinsdorf, you want to give him the old finger. But if you're a Celtics fan, I mean, this is a night you can sleep easy and probably not worry about, because the Celtics are 15-3. They're second place right now in the Eastern Conference, 2 games behind Cleveland, who they beat to stop their undefeated run, which is insane to start the way they started. The Celtics are also 8-2 in the last 10 games, so 8 wins in the last 10 games. That's pretty damn good. And then once again, they have a plus 10.6 point differential. They're averaging 120.2 points per game, only allowing 109.6 points per game. That's a recipe for success. I don't really know. Once again, the Bulls, 10th place in the Eastern Conference, 4-6 in the last 10 games, 6.5 point differential, minus 6.5 point differential. So they're only scoring 117.4 points per game, which would normally be great, but you're allowing opponents to score 123.9. You can't win if the opponent is, if you hit a 2 and then the opponent comes down and hits a 3. You can't go bucket to bucket, and the Celtics have an explosive offense. So I don't really know if this might be a blowout. I'll be honest. As a Chicago fan, as a Bulls fan, this is going to be a blowout. Biggest thing here, though, that could be an upside is Lonzo Ball is rumored to be returning tonight in tonight's game. So maybe that means he's ready for tomorrow's game. If he doesn't start tonight, that makes it even better for a chance for tomorrow, because I don't know if they're going to try and start him back-to-back games. Maybe they'll work his way. We'll see what Billy Donovan does, but that is big news. Lonzo Ball making his return to the lineup since the first time since October. So he's had a month and a half. Now, let's talk college football. Let's talk what everybody's talking about. Let's talk college football. Here's my playoff predictions. Once again, these are things that I am doing just based off of my gut feeling, but also based off of stats and what we think is going to go down. So here are the final 12 rankings. Remember, the college football this year is 12 teams, not the top 12, but 12 teams with 5 conferences being represented. So it's important to believe and know that the rankings and the playoffs and how they're going to come down to going to be different. You're going to be like, what the hell? This is not even a top 12 team. Yeah, but the Big 12 needs another conference. For the rankings, I have Ohio State topping off at number 1. And I think that's because, personally, I think Ohio State beats Michigan this week. I think it's a no-brainer. But then I think with Ohio State winning that, they lock in their seat into the Big Ten championship game, which Oregon obviously is already clinched. So Oregon is not worried about making the conference game. Even if they lose this week, they already clinched a spot in the playoffs and really in the in the conference game and in the playoffs. So Oregon's not worried about it, but Ohio State, if they win, that eliminates any possibility for anybody else. So win and you're in for Ohio State. But I personally believe championship game, Big Ten this year, Ohio State versus Oregon, and it's going to become, I think Ohio State wins it. I'll be honest. I'm not even a big Ohio State guy. I think Will Howard's a decent quarterback. He's not the best quarterback by any means, but I think this is the one. I think Ohio State tops it off. Texas, I don't think Texas is losing the championship game, nor are they losing against Texas Tech, no matter who they play in the SEC championship game. Oregon, I would have third. Miami, Florida, University of Miami, obviously. The U coming in fourth. Georgia, fifth. Penn State, sixth. Notre Dame, seventh. Boise State, eighth. Tennessee, ninth. Indiana, 10th. Alabama, 11th. And SMU 12th. So those are my final rankings after rivalry week. So that means I have Bama beating Auburn. SMU has already clinched their game, clinched the Big 12 title game. So who's going to face them is really the big question. Indiana, I'm not a big Indiana fan, but I mean they only have one loss, and they're playing Purdue this week, so they ain't going to lose. For Indiana, the biggest thing of how to bump up their ranking and therefore their playoff ranking would be they beat Purdue, make it into the conference championship game, which would mean they beat Purdue and they need Ohio State and Penn State to lose. That's difficult because Ohio State is playing Michigan, which we know is the game, of course, and that's a big game. But Penn State's playing Maryland, and Maryland's a good team. I don't know if they necessarily struggle with them. Penn State's not been like the best offensively, but I don't know. I think Penn State probably wins their game. I think all of them, Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State all win, which, once again, Ohio State only needs to win. If they win, they're in the conference championship game, and thus Indiana can't rank any better than 10th, in my opinion. Penn State, once again, same thing that I just said with Indiana. Tennessee's good. They did beat Bama, so you got to have them above Bama. And I don't know if they've locked in there. I believe they've clinched their spot in the SEC title game. If not, then Georgia is about to. Georgia actually has a chance to miss it, which would be huge because that puts them in a really particular spot, kind of similar to Bama when it comes to the playoffs. Like, you don't want to miss the conference championship game because, once again, 5 conferences are needing to be represented in the college football playoffs, which means 5 college champions get an automatic bid into the college football playoffs. So if you win your college football championship game, you win your conference championship game, you're into the college football playoffs. So that's why it's so big for these next 2 games, because you really do put yourself in a position to where you basically tell the playoff people, like the committee, that you're not going anywhere. So for the playoffs, once again, I think Ohio State wins against Michigan, and then they beat Oregon. And for that reason, I have them number 1 in the playoffs. I could easily see Texas being switched around with them just because it's Texas. So I could see Ohio State first or Texas first, and then whoever's not there second. I see Miami, Florida winning the ACC championship game with no issue. They have already clinched their spot in the ACC championship game. I'm not sure who their opponent's going to be yet. I think that's to be determined. But I think Miami, Florida obviously is going to win the ACC. Boise State 4th. Boise State is not going to lose, in my opinion. They're not going to lose against any of their team. They're going to win their conference pretty easily. Once again, the top 5 spots are reserved for conference champions. So Boise State, although they're 8th in my ranking, at the end of the season, they're going to be 4th in the playoffs because they need those top 5 spots to be conference champions. Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame, all kind of taking away that 5th, 6th, and 7th spot. Georgia 8th, Tennessee 9th, SMU 10th, Indiana 11th, BYU 12th. BYU is the biggest one for me. That's going to be kind of like that's tough. And I know I said top 5 are conference champions. I misspoke. It's top 4 are conference champions. So these top 4 spots are reserved for conference champions, but they need 5 conferences to be represented overall. So the committee has to find 5 conferences, 4 of them being conference champions, and then 1 of them is going to be filling out the 5 through 12 spot. And that's why BYU is in and Alabama is out. Because BYU is a conference, if they win their conference championship, which would be the Big 12 this year because they transferred in, I think they get in due to that fact. Most people have Arizona State making it to the playoffs, which I'm not excited about, but they're statistically the best team to make their conference title game. Especially because they play Arizona, who's only like 4-7 this year. So not very good for Arizona fans, not very good for Arizona State, great for Arizona State fans, not good for Arizona fans. So yeah, these are my predictions. Once again, this is all based off of my personal feelings, but also the statistics and the research that I did. And we're going to go into a little bit more here to talk about it. Sorry. Okay. All right, so who's out? You're bowling. You're going bowling. Let's go bowling. Right? You're going bowling, but it hurts because you didn't make the playoffs. So you got your wins. You got more than 6 wins. So you're going to make a bowl game. You're going to get You're going to get probably into some great places to play bowl games, but you're just not in the top 12. First off, Alabama, right? Alabama's got 3 losses this year against Georgia, South Carolina, and Missouri. Not good. Not good. You couldn't lose those games. Another thing, ranked. They're ranked 11th in my thing, but once again, the college football playoff requires 5 conference champions, which would mean whoever wins the Big 12 between probably, once again, I believe it's going to be BYU versus Arizona State in the conference championship. Whoever wins that game is going to be into the playoffs, kicking Alabama out. Arizona State, I have them out because they have a 71% chance to make their Big 12 championship game. The Big 12 is probably the most questionable conference right now because they have like a 4 or 5-way tie at the top between like Colorado, BYU, Arizona State, and Iowa State. But Arizona State has the easiest rivalry game to win this week. So they have the highest percentage, 71%, to make it into their championship game. I think the one thing why I think Arizona might upset them, and I only say that because Arizona does hold historic lead against them, 51-45 overall in games. And although they're 4-7, Arizona has been known to like show spurts of brilliance, and what better time to show that than rivalry week when you can really knock Arizona State out of contention, right? That just adds a whole other like layer into it. Like maybe we're not going to a bowl. If you're Arizona, you're like, maybe we're not going to a bowl, but let's make sure Arizona State doesn't get into the playoffs. Like there's no better way to take on your rival than by saying that. Clemson, ACC, they're 9-2. They need a win over South Carolina, and they need Miami, Florida to lose against Syracuse. So Miami against Syracuse, good game, but I don't know if Syracuse is good enough to beat Miami. I think Clemson can get that win over South Carolina, but we've seen South Carolina has beat people like Bama this year. They have beat, I think they beat Texas A&M, so they beat good teams. South Carolina is no slouch. Clemson needs a win, though, and they're most likely going to miss the ACC title game. And if you miss the title game, you're not going to make the playoffs very easily. It just makes it that much harder. Right now, Miami, Florida, or the University of Miami, has an 81% chance of making the ACC title game, which it's going to be SMU has already locked in. And just like Oregon, they've already clinched their spot. So it's just SMU versus who at this point, and it's 81% chance it's going to be Miami. For Texas A&M, you play Texas for your final game, who has a 77.2% probability of winning per ESPN Analytics. Honestly, I'd put that more at like a 90% because it's Texas, right? Texas is probably the number 1 team in the nation after this week because it's Texas. They also have Quinn Ewers. They've got a lot of weapons. They've got a lot of pros on their team. I mean, they're going to be a lot for playoff teams to take on, let alone Texas A&M. Texas A&M also has 3 losses: South Carolina, Notre Dame, and Auburn. Auburn's a really bad loss. Auburn is not good this year, so you don't want to see that. Notre Dame, top 10 team. Have them going to the playoffs. South Carolina, once again, beating good teams, showing up when they need to. Once again, though, that Auburn loss, not a good look. And I think because of that 77% chance of losing to Texas, I think it's more 90% chance. So, all right, guys, that was the first episode. Now let's talk about what's next. All right, next week, I'm going to try and do this once a week. Once again, I'll stay up to date with news stories throughout the week, so I may release something small here and there. But next week, we're going to talk about college football again. We're going to be done with the rivalry week, and we'll be able to talk a little more clearly about the college football playoffs. We're going to talk about bowling, and we're going to have our final prediction of who's making it in, who's missing it, and then we're also going to find out who's playing who in these bowl games. So we'll be able to kind of predict a couple of bowl games, and see like who's going to be what number and what ranking, and therefore playing in which bowl. The NFL, we're going to start our road to the playoffs. It's going to be week 14, so we're going to take a look ahead, obviously coming off of those Thanksgiving games, but more importantly, now we're on that other coin to where let's start talking about who's going to make the playoffs and who's getting knocked out. The NCAA basketball, we're going to start talking basketball here soon for college because conference play is starting next week. So that's huge for obviously a lot of reasons. Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC. We're starting conference play. So that's really where these top 25 teams start having the meat of their schedule. And then we'll talk a little bit about Chicago sports if we have time. We'll talk about the Bulls and Blackhawks and how they're kind of both struggling. But do we call it a struggle or is it more of a rebuild? We'll figure that out kind of based on where they're standing now and what their future prospects and future draft order looks like. And also, we'll take a look more into the idea of, are we tanking and struggling, or are we tanking and rebuilding? Other than that, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to follow me on all socials. I have my Instagram here, mksnyder13 on Instagram. Make sure you follow me along there. I announce all of my streams. I announce all of my YouTube videos, anything like that. It's going to be posted on there on my story as well. Make sure you follow me on Genistry on YouTube and obviously here on Twitch. Drop a follow if you can. Hit that follow button on Twitch. Make sure to go and subscribe over there on YouTube. Hit the notification button for all of these so that you are up to date with not just this, but I also do a lot of gaming as well. So if you're interested in that, make sure you join in. I typically do that more in the evening with some of my boys. Also, make sure you join the Discord. The Discord is a great place to meet other people, to also get a community built around sports or gaming or whatever you want to talk about. There's always a place for you inside the Discord community, inside the crew community, inside my community. So all of those links are going to be on the Twitch channel. If you go to my Twitch channel right now, or you follow or anything, you can go to my Twitch channel right now. You can turn on notifications, but you can also find all of those links to my YouTube, Twitch, and Discord and Instagram. I appreciate you guys. I hope this was enlightening, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do. I'll see you next week. Peace and love. Bye.